What we did was we appealed to all former retirees to come once a week to a meeting room over in the machinery division and just dig through all of the old records that we found, paperwork, everything, machine parts, brochures, anything, to try and put together the history. And that's what we did. We uncovered a lot of the stuff that people had forgotten.
There's history here, in every room, in every product, in every person. They've seen industrial revolutions, Great Depressions and recessions, wartime and peacetime. And through it all, behind every product is a story. This is the story of Gardner. The story of how one man created a 120-year legacy, a legacy that has touched nearly every industry and pushed the world forward several times over. But who was the man who started it all? How did it all come to be? It all starts back at the turn of the 20th century, where this single man working at a humble machine factory had an idea. And his name? Frederick Gardner.
Frederick Gardner. So he started the company in 1905 in Beloit, Wisconsin. He had moved here from Pennsylvania, and he worked for a company called Besley.
Besley, just right behind the old Holiday Inn, had a plant there probably 100 years. He worked for Besley here in Beloit, South Beloit area. Then he branched out on his own to start Gardner double disc technology.
Frederick N. Gardner was born September 4th, 1848, in a small town in Massachusetts, where he began his career in the tool and die industry as a machinist apprentice, which became the foundation for his future. He bolstered his career at Pratt & Whitney, where he invented the long hole drill and influenced many other innovations, which led him to the Midwest.
Frederick was an innovator and was an entrepreneur. Frederick had a different idea to design a disc grinding machine. Instead of grinding one side of the part at a time, was to have two spindles and to be able to grind both sides of the part at the same time.
Took the two disc grinders and put them together, and they made a double disc grinder, and they ground both sides of the part at the same time. That was the big invention.
You could better control flatness, parallelism. The productivity was significantly better, that you're grinding both sides of the part at the same time as opposed to just grinding one and then needing to flip it over in the fixture and grind the other side apart.
So he said nobody at Besley wanted anything to do with that, and so he started his own company and called it Gardner Machine Company in Beloit, Wisconsin.
To leave a steady, stable job that he had at Besley Machine Company to want to pursue his own ideas, his own innovation, I would say that, yeah, he was an entrepreneur and an inventor.
He had a new idea, and I think he had a passion for it. And he had a boss that was probably not quite so passionate as him, and he saw an opportunity, and he took it. So he went out on his own, and I think he was motivated by several things, his passion and also his pocketbook.
With Frederick's new invention, business was steadily growing, and it wasn't long before his small shop in Beloit became a little too cramped for comfort. It was time to set out and find a new and permanent home for Gardner Machine.
It got reorganized, I think, in 1912. And moved here to South Beloit, Illinois. And it was the first company that moved to South Beloit.
The original Gardner building up front was there before the street. That's why it's called Gardner Street.
They named it Gardner Street.
There's heavy-duty equipment here. Look at those presses down there, and when they built this building, the presses went in first, then they built the building around it. The same with the addition. The press went in first, and then you build the building around it. It's so big.
It was to the front here, away from the creek, and they were building machines here.
The majority of what they made were horizontal double disc grinders, so a horizontal spindle orientation, but they also made vertical double disc grinding machines as well, both double disc verticals as well as single disc verticals, where we're maybe just grinding one side of the part at a time.
But what exactly is double disc grinding? Well, it's everywhere, and it's a very important step in countless industries.
Double disc. It's simple.
So what Gardner really specializes in is nut-inserted double disc grinding wheels.
Face grinding, nut inserted, attached to a plate, spinning, run parts between it.
Gardner Machine Company built double disc grinding machines that would utilize two disc grinding wheels facing one another.
Double disc is grinding two sides at once. Spinning your grinding wheels, grinding this thing. Any part, any size, grinding parallel finishes.
And customers would send parts in between them, connecting rods, compression springs, bearings, gears, valve plates to grind them to a specific thickness, parallelism, flatness, surface finish, and a bunch of other requirements. The main one being grinding it to that specific size.
So what do you got? You got parallel, precision, accuracy. That's what double disc is. There's a lot of moving parts to get that done on a production basis.
With the business prospering and the new building well underway, Mr. Gardner's family also became involved, as well as a wealthy family of investors that would become instrumental in Gardner Machine's future.
He had his 2 sons working with him. They stayed with the company, and then one, I believe, was the vice president of sales, Charlie Gardner. So Frederick, he comes here, he's building the plant. From what I understand it, he never set foot in the new plant in South Beloit because he happened to pass away. People didn't live as long back then. It may have been pneumonia, but the big investor he had was the Thompsons.
He was heavily involved in the company, but he was financed by other people in the community. And there was a family named Thompson that was heavily invested. And when Frederick Gardner was gone, the Thompsons held most of the ownership of Gardner and held it for years and years.
His sons didn't assume ownership of the company. After Frederick passed, the majority of the shares were owned by the Thompson family.
The Thompson family had the money. You think, oh, we're on Gardner Street, right? And if you go up there, and the first intersection past the machinery building is Thompson Street too, by the way. The Thompsons never put their name on the company. They always were it was Gardner Machine Company.
It was the Thompson family that was really responsible for the investments required to advance this thing into really an international company, because Gardner became the expert in double disc grinding.
And how did Gardner become the experts in double disc grinding? It all has to do with a little side project Frederick Gardner was working on before his passing. But to tell it right, we'll have to jump ahead a few years to the spring of 1985.
When I started here, it was called Gardner Machine Company. The sign's still there, I think. Gardner Machine Company. I was home for spring break. They had an ad in the paper for a quality chemist. My mom says, you should apply for that job. I says, well, they want a year experience. I'm not going to qualify. And I remember her cut out the ad and stuffed it in my shirt pocket. She said, send them my resume. You got nothing to lose. So I sent them my resume, and I got an interview, and they said that they really want a year's experience, but they would train me, they said. And they didn't have any other qualified candidates.
But chemists aren't exactly necessary in a machine shop. And that's when Al learned about a well-kept secret just behind the Gardner machine plant.
I thought, when I interviewed for that job, what does a machine shop need a chemist for? It was like the first question in the interview. Oh, well, we got this little grinding wheel plant out back. Oh, okay. Now that makes a little more sense.
Okay, I build machines. Why don't I build the abrasives that go with it?
Trying to find an accurate and low-cost option for finishing parallel clamps, Mr. Gardner decided to try and solve the issue by tinkering with abrasive grinding.
Gardner Machine Company was basically the upfront kind of face of the company, and then the Gardner Abrasives was the consumable line for the machinery division. We were just set a little bit north of the Gardner Machine Company facility, but on the same property.
But then I heard, well, you got a grind wheel plant, and the plant was a well-kept secret in town. A lot of people just thought this was machine company. I mean, my brother worked next door, and he didn't know that there was a grinding wheel plant here. It was a well-kept secret, and they intentionally kept it that way.
The theory is the razor and the blade. Gillette. They sell razors, the handle, and they sell blades. 2 completely different products. The razor, the Gardner grinder, had to have blades. What happened to the blade when you put it on the razor? You used it up. It was consumable. Oh, you had to go buy more. Buy more what? More Gillette blades, not some other brand, because it wouldn't fit.
You build a machine, right? After you're done building the machine, someone wants to copy, all you gotta do is tear it apart. But with a grinding wheel, it's all about the process. You tear it apart, it doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's how you make it, and it's hidden. But when they first built these grinders, they didn't make the grinding wheels because they weren't grinding wheels.
Gardner was at the turn of the century, and a lot of these compounds didn't even exist at that time, the knowledge of phenolic resins. The advancement of grinding was slap a piece of sandpaper onto a disc and spin it.
They were sandpaper glued on the steel wheels. They ran them till the sandpaper went dull. They soaked them in water, took the sandpaper off, and glued on another sheet of sandpaper.
This is a single layer of grit. They'd probably have to change out that disc of sandpaper multiple times a day.
Your depth is zilch, you're going to be changing them forever.
Eventually they says, these don't last very long. It's not that viable a process. So they came up with a thing called Gardner Improved Abrasives.
And so that was the evolution of Gardner Improved Abrasives, was going from a single layer of grit to start to have some depth of usable abrasive.
And what they came up with is an oxychloride bonded grinding wheel, and they made it about 3/8 of an inch thick, which lasted 10 times longer than one sheet of sandpaper.
That was the first grinding wheel of any depth.
The magnesium oxychloride bond was the original bond system for disc grinding. It was kind of the only bond system at that time. Similar chemistry to like stucco or concrete cement. The like 1920s, they were starting to be able to increase the thickness of the magnesium oxychloride bond.
And then in about 1930, 1940, they came up with this plastic called Bakelite. Bakelite is phenolic resin, and then you can make a phenolic resin wheel, and that worked really good for a double disc grinder, and that's what we use today here.
So then they got thicker and then applied phenolic resins and all sorts of resins to build thicker and thicker in combination.
But now we make grinding wheels with 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of usable abrasive grit on them.
It was very unique. We had a disc grinding plant in the front building, and then the abrasive plant in the back. Every machine needs abrasives to fulfill the contract, so you make the wheels in the back plant, take them across the parking lot, and put them on the machine in the front plant.
The year was 1950. As Gardner was celebrating its 45th year, a company from Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, had set its sights on Gardner. They saw an opportunity. Add the Gardner grinder to their already respected portfolio, and use the abrasive division for continuous earnings. And that business was Landis Tool Company.
The Thompson family owned Gardner from 1912 to 1950. As generations move on, they sold Gardner Machine Company to Landis Tool Company in 1950.
Landis Tool, which is a maker of cam and crank grinders. How they can grind cam and cranks, to me, it's incredible. They are the creme de la creme, no doubt about it.
Landis is still the parent company, if you will. Back then, we probably operated more independently as individual business units than we do today. I mean, Landis bought Gardner back in the 1950s, so a lot of history between all the companies.
And Landis wanted Gardner to grow, especially the abrasive division, which up to that point was a very small and cramped building. So, the new additions began.
They expanded Gardner Abrasives to be what the majority of our shop floor is now, where the production office and sales office and production shop floor and finishing shop floor are.
If you look up on the ceiling, you can see, oh, there's an addition, there's an addition.
The people that set that plan up, it's very efficient. They really did a good job of laying out the logistics within the plant.
The companies continued to flourish, and as they grew, they began to be noticed. In 1968, a major acquisition would happen that would start an over 30-year ownership that would see massive growth and change, some for the better, and eventually, some for the worse.
I started as a bench chemist in late '74. I came here shortly after I was married, and my intent was to establish some stability. This looked like the place, but when I started here, the top corp was Litton Corporation, and they owned everything.
Litton was a conglomerate where they bought up different businesses that were completely unrelated, and they had bought Landis Tool Company. When they bought Landis Tool, they got Gardner.
And with Litton Industries completely on board, they decided it was time for yet another expansion.
When I started here, there were 2 production lines. 1/3 of the building was added shortly after I started here.
In the 70s, they expanded that shop floor west to be able to add lines 3 and 4 to accommodate making straight wheels and other large disc wheels.
So when I hired into Gardner, we were owned by Litton. And Litton was a very large company. It's a Litton that made the microwaves, did a lot of defense shipbuilding for the U.S. Navy.
They had shipbuilding, medical, industrial, oil field. It was a huge company, but it got all busted up.
But we'll get to that later. First, we need to talk about chemistry. The machinery and abrasive divisions were running at full speed, but not much had changed. There were minor, subtle improvements over time, but in the abrasive plant, it was the chemist that would expand the Gardner grinding disc into whole new territories and industries.
Gardner was a very old, rigid company. The rules were the rules, and innovation was hard.
The claim to fame for Gardner is its consistency. Every wheel in that batch we just shipped are going to act the exact same, and from one shipment to the next, those wheels are going to act the exact same. I think it created this mindset at Gardner that you didn't want to change anything.
That doesn't rest too well when you're trying to innovate. I worked in the lab learning the system for years and years and years, and in between trying to interject new items into the formulations. There were improvements that had to be made.
I've seen that we have been open to change. We have been open to changing how we've been doing stuff.
New systems, new fillers, new internal lubricants, and new bonding agents, epoxies.
Kind of the next step in the bond development world was introducing the epoxy bond systems. The epoxy bond systems allowed us another degree of flexibility, another degree of being able to achieve softer bonds. Generally, you do need a very soft, forgiving wheel to grind very hard materials. As manufacturers were starting to develop harder and harder, more difficult materials to grind, epoxy bonds were a nice solution to that.
An evolution in the industry that is fairly recent, but it's still many years old, is the addition of the ceramic ring.
There's a product by 3M and it's patented. They offered to sell it to us. The big thing in the lab is we always make bars and break them. When you put ceramic grain in a bar, it tells you absolutely nothing. You gotta grind with it. So when you grind with it, you find that it really cuts. Instead of taking 2 passes on a part, you could take 1 pass, and you saved a lot of labor, and you can double your production in your factories just by using this wheel.
Those are the 3 main bond systems that we utilize here in our conventional abrasives. A level above that, though, is where we're starting to get into super abrasives. When we start talking about super abrasives, we're referring to diamond and CBN. Those abrasive particles have a much higher hardness than aluminum oxide and silicon carbide. Manufacturers are developing harder and harder, more difficult alloys to grind, to machine, to process. So therefore we needed a harder abrasive to be able to grind those parts, those difficult to grind parts.
Usually we make segments or buttons and then epoxy those to a steel disc.
So they're working on diamond CBN wheels, and they said, I don't believe the process is going very well or very fast. Our president at the time, Leroy Coops, decided to acquire a diamond company, and acquired Citco in 1983.
Promoted a successful acquisition of Citco Corporation, expanding our product line into CBN and diamond product. Thank you, Lee Coops.
He acquired Citco for their grinding wheel division. The 3 companies come together, Landis, Gardner, and Citco. Citco was acquired by basically Litton Industries.
It's a lot more costly, but the wheels last a lot longer. There's usually involving more precise machines and less stock removal, and you hold a lot more accurate tolerances.
With the new bond systems and grinding wheels being created, it was now time to get them out in the field. But with new products comes new markets. Markets Gardner had never been a part of before, which was proving to be a daunting task. Fortunately, there was someone already at Gardner that had an idea on how to make it all work.
I'm the opposite of a chemist. My degree is in business administration. I started out as a sales trainee. I actually worked in the lab with Al Donahue, who was a chemist at the time. We were trying to branch into the roll grinding market, which was a new market for us. The first hurdle is to get them to allow you to test. Jim Cook was the supervisor in the lab at the time.
I said, hey, we got a California territory. It's time for you to get out and see some of the customers. There was a steel plant northeast of LA. The state of California banned steel manufacturers. They couldn't furnace steel in California. The U.S. Steel had this great big huge plant sitting there, and they couldn't make steel. So what did they do? They took billets from Birmingham and Korea and shipped them into California. Just a big hunk of steel.
6 to 12 feet wide, 4 to 5 inches thick, 20 to 50 feet long. So it's just a giant tabletop of steel.
What they do is they take this billet, heat it up to a glowing temperature.
When they heat it up, it makes it very malleable.
And there's these big machines with these big rollers on them. That glowing billet, it hits those rollers that are spaced about 1/4, 3/8 inch thinner than the billet, and it runs through and it spreads it out and heads along.
Each mill station, the billet might get reduced down by another 1/4 inch.
And they get wider and wider. And after the final one, voila, you have sheet metal. Those rollers that squashed it.
Get so much damage put onto them, the damage on those rolls then get imprinted onto the steel, which would make that sheet metal have some nonconformities, some flaws to it.
They'd run it over to the grind shop. Aha, grind shop, I know what that is.
The roll grinding wheels really are like a 36 by 4 grinding wheel that is going to grind that work roll to recondition it so that it can go back into the mill and keep producing steel.
So they ground the surface with this surface against the steel, moving back and forth.
I think a lot of our challenges with our customers in getting business is sometimes getting the opportunity to test. Customers are busy. If a product's working okay, they really don't want to spend time testing because sometimes it's an inconvenience for them.
I got friendly with this one shop superintendent. We were using epoxy modified resin wheels. That's the stuff I developed. It was epoxy modified resin wheels. I convinced him, for your application, this wheel is much more forgiving because of the epoxy. He said, yeah, I'll go for it. And they work fantastic, and the guy loved it. Holy cow. I sold this wheel, I'll be damned. That's a cold call. You know, that's not an existing application at all. We were the new kid in there.
It was a very nice, large order in this new market, and it was really a lot of pride that went with that to break into that new business that we're trying to focus on.
And just as the 1980s rolled around, a new era began, where the chemists and the salesmen combined forces and went out together to tackle these new industries, opening up a whole new world for Ben, Jim, and Al.
It was a little overwhelming at first, not exactly knowing how our product's being utilized. Started to gain a much larger appreciation for it.
I liked it because I always liked cars, and a lot of our grinding wheels were grinding car parts. I already knew what those parts are because at one time I thought I wanted to be a mechanic. I remember going into the Ford Motor Company and seeing them build engines and thinking, oh, that engine's in my Mustang that I have, and I really like that. That's cool.
They start off with a casting coming from next door of a block, and you follow the thing all the way through the plant. The thing is hanging there, and a guy turns a switch, and the engine starts. Wow!
I like that stuff. I like the brawn, the iron part, and being part of this industry.
It's the automotive market, it's the bearing market.
You have the outside diameter of the bearing, which we can grind with our centerless grinding wheels, and then you have the two faces of the bearing, which generally get ground on a set of double disc grinding wheels.
I mean, grind a lot of like bearing races, connecting rods, washers, springs.
Milwaukee, big industrial city, a lot of accounts. Kohler, I found absolutely amazing, and apparently they still do it. Grinding toilet bottoms. That ceramic porcelain kind of stuff that you sit on, that white thing, the base of that toilet is pretty rough, not very flat. What do? You gotta grind it. Had one big grinding wheel, running pretty slow, drop it in the fixture, pull the lever, shove the base into the spinning wheel, grind that sucker flat.
Who would think that a bottom of a toilet needs to be ground on a Gardner Abrasive product?
That's amazing.
We sold some machines along with Gardner wheels to a company that made contact lenses. And what they would do is grind the contact lenses flat and parallel before they put the contour onto the lens for the eyeball.
What? You got a big grinder for machetes? What? You make how many machetes a year? Where do they go?
And then whenever we'd sell a new grinder, they had to go out with grinding wheels, and then I would always say, these are the wheels we're going to try, until the machine ran off, and I interacted some with the customers and run off.
It told the customer that, hey, we're dealing with somebody legitimate, not somebody who comes in with 3 grinding wheels and try one of these and see which ones works, and I'll see you later. No, it was becoming closely involved.
Landis had sold a machine to a customer down in Texas, and they were trying to complete the runoff to get the last 10% of their sale, and they couldn't do it with the current abrasives they had on there. Someone from Landis suggested, hey, why don't you try some Gardner abrasives on there? Send down some Gardner tech support. I'll say the first wheel I sent in there failed pretty miserably, almost indicating that it was too hard, even though I made the wheel act very, very soft and very forgiving.
You may not hit it the first time, but they need to see enough progress in that first trial. And usually the second and third ones where you really can get zeroed in on the specification.
But it was a nice learning experience for me. On OD applications, we had to make the wheel very, very hard so that it wouldn't break down too quickly. Conversely, from a disc wheel, you do want it to break down pretty readily. I used a very interesting combination of grains using our green silicon carbide and some pink aluminum oxide, as well as some ceramic or sol gels. And with that combination and making that wheel very, very hard, we were able to achieve the runoff requirements for Landis to complete that sale.
I got to go out in the field and interact with customers, learn more about the business. And we really do learn a lot about the business when you're in the customer's plant and see how it's used.
We were buying millions of pounds of these grits.
There's 3 or 4, maybe 5 major grain suppliers because it takes a lot of power to manufacture grain. So a lot of them are up in the Niagara Falls region of New York.
It takes a tremendous amount of electricity to fuse sand and coke to make silicon carbide. And it works, and they're fascinating places. And there's 3 major companies at the time that I was up there. One had plants on the US side of the border, and the other was on the Canadian side. And these 3 companies had to coordinate with the power company when they were going to run their furnaces. The biggest one was the Queen. It was the biggest electrical furnace in the world, and that baby required a lot of juice. That company had 3, and next door company had 3, and the US had a couple, and they had to coordinate with the power companies when they were going to run their furnaces. I was there once when somebody screwed up, and they browned out Niagara Falls by pulling too much energy. Now that sounds impossible. How are you going to brown out Niagara Falls? They did it. These things happen. It has to coordinate because there's still a limit. That's what I liked about this job. I always ask myself when I walk from the building to the car out there, you learn anything today? By and large, for most of the time, you did. But as I advanced further in the company, I could say that without even thinking. It's amazing how things are made.
With all this new business secured, Gardner was growing faster than ever, but Lytton was growing anxious. After a recent disaster, there were growing concerns that the land Gardner was built on may be unsafe, potentially halting production at any time.
I arrived probably 2 months after the big flood. That was the worst one they had. I heard all about it, but we've had floods since.
There's a creek that runs pretty close to Gardner's location.
Turtle Creek is right behind the place. And if there's a good winter and there's a fast thaw, hell of a lot of water comes down.
They had a lot of rain, there was a lot of flooding, and all the shipping docks at Gardner were standing water. Couldn't ship product for a day or 2 until you could get the water out of there.
That was one of the big contexts of building a sub-plant in Calhoun, Georgia.
Gardner decided that they wanted a second abrasive plant. The customers were worried about putting all their business in a grinding wheel plant that only had 1 location.
Because if this place ever got blown under by a tornado or flooded out, where would their supply come from? So the answer was build a second plant.
So Gardner established a second manufacturing-only plant in Calhoun, Georgia.
That plant was an extension of this operation. It was the exact same as this plant. It was just a production line. The business system was here. All the development was here. That was just production.
And it really was set up in the southeast because that was a growing part of the country. It wasn't just for the southeast. They built duplicate manufacturing process and duplicate wheels to the plant in South Beloit. So it was really set up as 2 locations to take the concern away from our customers of a natural disaster damaging the one location up in South Beloit, Illinois.
The Georgia plant was a success, but over at Lytton, a shift was occurring. As the company headed into the 90s, they too were growing, but on a scale that was quickly becoming unsustainable in its current state.
So Lytton became this big conglomerate, all these dissimilar industries. They decided that, geez, these different companies don't provide value to the shareholders.
It was decided at one point in time to split the commercial companies away from the shipbuilding or the government contract type of part of the business.
All the stuff that was related to defense was remaining part of Lytton, and all the stuff that wasn't defense related was going to be in this commercial business, and we're splitting in 2.
That's when Western Atlas was formed. Western Atlas was the largest commercial company under Lytton at the time.
They decided to name the company Western Atlas. And what Western Atlas was a division of Lytton, a rather large one, that would map the bottom of the ocean floor with sonar, radar, pulled behind a ship so they know where to drill the oil wells. And so we were part of Western Atlas. For many years, we were Western Atlas.
Gardner and Landis and Sickle were all combined at the time. Really, it was no different than being under Lytton. You were a division of Western Atlas instead of a division of Lytton. And that lasted a few years, and then they decided to split.
Western Atlas and Baker Hughes merged. So Baker Hughes also did geology work. And so then Baker Hughes and Western Atlas says, geez, we're still too big. And so they split us off in another business called Unova.
That's when we became a division of Unova.
And Unova was a total made-up name. It was come down to the machinery end of metalworking. So we had Lam Technicon, we had Landis Gardner Sitco, and a company called Intermec that did RFID and barcode scanners.
With all the changes from Western Atlas to Unova underway, decisions were made that would change the trajectory of Gardner forever. They also decided that reorganizing parts of Gardner and Landis would be beneficial. But they unfortunately did not see how this would truly affect Gardner and Landis.
The machinery business is about break even, but eventually corporate says, no, everybody's got to make money.
Landis made a grinding machine and Gardner made a grinding machine. Different types of grinding machines, but the thought process was we're making machine tools, all grinding machines for the same basic customer base. Why not build them all in one plant?
And so they decided to consolidate the double disc line at Landis.
In '96, the technology, the prints, the manufacturing process of Gardner Machine Company was consolidated and moved out to Waynesboro, Pennsylvania at the time, which they've obviously relocated to Hagerstown, Maryland now.
It was a shocking day at Gardner. It was announced basically that they're going to shut the machine plant down and the abrasive plant's going to remain. And there was going to be a selected number of people that would be asked to relocate to Waynesboro to support the product line. The machine plant went from 60 people down to an offer of 5 or 6 that would be relocated. The majority of the people had to go out and find another line of work.
So when our machinery division was transferred out there, this was a new critter. They expected a lot of the engineers from Gardner to follow the product to Landis to help them do it. Most decided not, which was a shock. They got the line, but the expertise essentially didn't come.
Unfortunately, a double disc grinding and the technical aspects of running them off is much different than the Landis. Landis did a lot of CBN. We did mostly conventional.
That was a problem. So you got guys out there who are experts in cam and crank lobe grinding, all of a sudden thrust into double disc, which they know nothing about. Never worked out.
It's hard to merge companies. Over my years in business, they're going to move this product line from here to there. A lot of those aren't successful. It's very difficult to move a product line because all the expertise in the people, and the people don't want to move a lot of times. The guys that went out there, the Gardner guys, the Landis guys were really good to them, but this was home always, you know?
Yes, they built some Gardner machines, but never capitalized on it. Maybe the handwriting was on the wall that to build and innovate in the machinery end was very expensive. So perhaps it was better to consolidate at that time. It wasn't that bad for this end of the operation because there were still thousands of the damn things out there that needed razor blades. So we supplied the razor blades, and that was it.
At the turn of the 21st century, Gardner, with the help of the grinders still in the field and the sales force kicking things into overdrive, were able to keep things afloat. But it was Unova that found themselves in difficult times as poor decisions were made and the economy slowed.
When we were Unova, they decided that, geez, we're in the cutting tool business. They decided to buy Cincinnati Machine. We had some very tough times financially at a corporate level because it was hard to absorb.
And the business climate just dropped. The machine tool industry was receding. There was a lot of big-time international competition. I know for myself the hardest thing I ever did was shut down the Calhoun, Georgia plant. It'd been there for 25 years, but at that time our business was condensing and it looked like Calhoun was becoming highly redundant. And I had to go in unannounced on a Friday morning with Tom Toddy and shut the place down. Bango. That was hard because I knew these people, 26 people that I knew very well, every one of them.
But even after shutting the plant down, Unova was still struggling. And in 2005, the year of Gardner's centennial anniversary, the decision had already been made.
Unova decided to just drop the name and sell the machine tool part of the business and just concentrate on the bar scanning.
Basically, they sold us off. When you work for a company that is trying to be sold, and everybody knows it because they announced it, they're looking for a buyer. And you'd have different buyers come in and you're thinking, oh, is this going to be your new boss? It's not fun, you know? You put on a little show to say what you are and what you do and what's your strengths. Lamb Technicon was looking to buy us. And also Noritake came through here looking at us. They brought through several candidates before they came up with Feeds.
At the time, it was not called Feeds, it was called Feed Lil. And they are a large holding company out of Paris.
They flew in O'Hare and they got on one of these party buses and they came up here. There's about, 8 guys. Sanchez was part of that. You know, he tended to sit in the back and the other guys were asking the questions, but he was taking mental notes. And then it went dead for a long time. I mean, nothing happened. I think the deal was off. And all of a sudden it came back and it says, oh, they announced that we were sold to Fives Lil.
Yeah, when we got purchased by Fives Lil, being based out of Europe, there was some hesitation by a lot of companies. You know, what are they all about? What are they going to do with us? Looking at it 20 plus years later, it's been a great partnership.
I think as Gardner, as a relatively small company that is quick to react, very customer service oriented. At the same time, we have the strong financial backing and good corporate leadership from Fives. I've seen that partnership, that relationship being a very good one.
They're committed to the companies, they're committed to the product and the employees. A great situation where they bought us and keep us operating as we always were.
But Fives had the difficult job of picking up the problems Unova had left behind. And Fives already had a double disc grinding operation.
As Fives bought Landis, they already owned Justina, who also made disc grinders in Italy.
Fives acquired a company called Justina that made cam, crank, and double disc grinders. There was a meeting and the deal was made that Landis will focus on cam and crank and Justina will focus on double disc.
Landis dropped the Gardner product line and they had Justina drop their cam and crankshaft orbital grinder line, so they weren't competing with one another.
So it was decided from a corporate level to shut down the Gardner product, the disc grinding line, and concentrate on the Justina product line.
That was kind of the end of Gardner Machine Company, if you will.
But something else was looming. Only a few short years later, an unprecedented financial crisis would affect the world over. The housing market crashed in 2008, causing the loss of millions of jobs. People lost their homes and businesses were forced to close, affecting nearly every corner of the world, including Gardner.
When I started here, it was July '08. It was only a few months later that the housing market crashed. Kind of global economy was crashing as well.
When I left in '08, business was going in the tank. Our total output was down, yet we had more capacity than we had product to put out at that capacity.
I was with Landis at the time and we were getting more cancellations than we were new orders. It was a very, very traumatic period, a lot of layoffs.
We went from being able to run 4 to 5 lines of production at any given time, down to only running 2 lines at that time. And we saw a significant recession and significant reduction in bookings. It's kind of a lot of loss in business.
A lot of the people I worked with in Detroit in the sales office were let go, unfortunately. They're good friends that the business just wasn't there to sustain all the positions. I was worried that, not just for myself, but for the company.
I was extremely new to the company at the time. I know I was nervous about my own longevity with the company, seeing that they're having layoffs within my first couple months of being here. I remember the other chemists and I looking at one another and saying, you know, should we talk to Al about which one he wants to keep? And I'll say this, it was very comforting that Al Donahue, Director of Operations at the time, reassured me that they would not be letting me go or the other new chemists go, that we were the future of the company. They were investing into the future even during those difficult times.
And, just as Ben began his career at the start of 2008, a similar situation would happen in 2020 when Ben became the new Director of Operations for Gardner Abrasives.
So that was a very, very trying time, a very difficult time to be first getting into more upper level management. Obviously with COVID hitting February, March of 2020, our business levels dropped off significantly to the point where we had to make some difficult decisions and have some layoffs.
Probably one of the most challenging times was during COVID. I mean, that was a unprecedented situation in our working career, and business tanked. Plants just shut down for weeks at a time. All businesses were affected, Gardner included, and we probably lost 20-30% of our volume almost instantly.
Our booking level dramatically fell off, so we had to make tough decisions.
Then you had the concern of the health concerns of all your employees and managing through that. It was just a very difficult period to manage through.
But you hold on, and it's not as if it's a fault of anything, it's just the big picture of the business climate, especially in the machine tool business. Things wane, but then they come back.
Fortunately, a lot of that business did come back, so we were able to hire a lot of those individuals back.
Things are improving.
There's a very high demand for our product coming immediately out of COVID, and then with that high demand kind of increased our lead time, creating a very, very large backlog.
But like anything, I mean, when you have good people and good products, you weather the storm, and then you come out hopefully stronger at the end.
I think that management did a good job navigating those storms. In the years after that, in 23 and 24, we really stabilized our workforce and were able to work that backlog and lead time back to a more normal level that the market expects.
Despite everything, recessions and downturns, changes in ownership, backlogs and pandemics, Gardner is still Gardner, and they're working just as hard now as they did then to keep the wheels turning and industries moving.
So Ben sent me something that says, you got a good story. And I was racking my brains and I was trying to think of a good story. So I'm going to share this, and just so I don't forget it. So I come to work at Gardner, my first day on the job. I had just graduated the day before, so I had to come in at 7:30. And I was early, and I'm sitting there, and I'm in the lobby, and I'm reading this magazine talking about how grinding is dying. Grinding is dying, okay? First day on the job, it's like, it's gonna be near net shape, it's gonna be laser cut, it's gonna be all milling, grinding is expensive, it's dying. And then over the years, I keep saying grinding is dying. And they said, when they closed the machinery, if you don't make machines, the grinding will never stay afloat. It's gonna be gone. And we're still here, and we're still thriving.
We make a very, very good product, and with some larger corporations, once they recognize the value in our product, those engineers, those managers share that information, share those success stories with their other locations, and that has been a good means of growth, being able to utilize those relationships and establish customers to expand our product globally.
Mark Twain said, the rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated when there's a rumor around that he was dead. And Gardner makes a great product, and it gets shipped all over the world. You know, we sell it in Brazil, we sell it in China, in Mexico, Italy. Those grinding wheels have wings.
So today we have 2 disc grinding plants within Fees that do manufacture double disc grinders and single disc grinders. Justina in Italy and Daisho in Japan. Gardner does work well with both of them to get our products on the spindle as they're run off at the factory and shipped to the customer. Some of those successes have led to business that we enjoy today.
All over the world, we have a good product. Our demise is not there, and I think we're going to be around for quite a while longer.
And there's one thing that makes it all possible. One thing that truly makes Gardner Gardner, and that's the people.
There is a line that I don't know exactly how it goes, but it's something along the lines of like the sign of a good society, the sign of a good culture is when men are planting trees to which they know they will never sit in that shade. So to know that you're doing good for something for future generations ahead of you. When I first started at Gardner, there was a lot of people with a lot of experience here that we were able to learn from. So they asked Jim Cook, the former plant manager before Al Donahue took over, to come back and mentor me and Matt. So Jim was coming back Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 until noon, and he would just talk about various applications with us, teach us about how grinding wheels are being used. Just the way Jim mentored me, and which, yeah, that memory I still hold on to today, obviously. I love sharing those stories of how our customers utilize our product with the people on the shop floor, so they have a greater appreciation of what they're doing with our product.
And on top of that, there was good camaraderie. The people that worked here were long-term employees. You learned that right away. And half of them were related to somebody else.
Gardner still has very much like a family feel to it. Father, son, or brothers that work here together. Cousins or nephews or nieces.
Yeah, you have a lot of relatives that work within the plant locations. And when you work for a good company, you want your friends and your relatives to work for that same company.
It was kind of a real tight organization, and it worked.
It's, the teamwork together. We talk about the people and the knowledge. You come in and you start as a chemist, and someone teaches you how to do it, and then all of a sudden someone new comes along and you got to teach them. Some guy comes in the lab, he's a salesman trainee, his name happens to be Bill Stimes, and you got to teach him how to make grinding wheels. So I spent some time with Bill in the lab.
I'm kind of the veteran of the groups today, but at the time, it seems like yesterday, I was the young sales guy in the room. Started as a sales trainee and ended up as a CEO, and never had any idea that was ever going to happen. It's like when you leave a company, when you retire, I think the hardest part is getting away from the people that you've lived with for so long, because in a certain sense, it was a subset of some sort of family. And that was the culture here. What can I leave the company as I look into leaving in a few years when I retire. It's hiring that younger generation that really can drive the companies forward, and I think we've done a good job with that, hiring some young salespeople and some young application engineers.
So Gardner's been around for 120 years. I think the people that originally designed the plant and originally designed our manufacturing process had a lot of forethought, great ingenuity, and I hope to bring that to Gardner currently to advance it in the future for another 120 years. I want to see that when I retire from this place, that I'm leaving in a better spot than when I joined it.
In the time that I was here, what more could you ask for? I came here knowing nothing. I learned the trade, the ins, the outs, the good, the bads. Met a lot of people. I'm still good friends with a lot of people. In fact, last summer, Mike Rock, former HR dude out at Waynesboro, called me up and said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm here. He says, "I'll be by." So he stopped by and we had dinner, and hey, they're all good guys.
You know, when you work for a company, as long as I have 36 years, you develop a lot of friendships, a lot of people you look up to that you cross paths with over your career, and I'm very fortunate. A lot of people I consider friends, a lot of people I think about often, look up to.
I think that's the common denominator. You line us up, stand us on our heads, and we're all the same.
My dream for Gardner going forward, where do I want to see Gardner go? I want Gardner to be here, right here in this area, continue to have jobs here in the Beloit and South Beloit area, where we were born and where a lot of innovations happened. And I think we have a very good workforce here, a lot of educated people. I'd like to see it continue here.
One thing that really impresses me about Gardner is, you know, you think of a company that's been there for 120 years, and all the families that they've supported and all the community work that those families have done, and just the community sponsorship of being in business in one location for 120 years. It's pretty remarkable.
Having the people here at Gardner really care about what the next person has to do, people choosing to help out one another, kind of working as a team to make everyone's life a little bit easier and to make our product as high of quality as we can.
You know, in closing, I'd just like to say happy birthday to Gardner. 120 years is remarkable and something we should all take a lot of pride in. So happy birthday, Gardner.
Because it was a tightly knit community here, everybody knew what everybody else was doing. And there were some guys that were pretty good practical jokers. There were some guys that were very creative. The best one that I saw was there was a guy in the shop that bought a new Ford Ranger. He loved the thing, and he always talking about his gas mileage in his little pickup truck. He loved it. Well, that got Jerry White thinking. What do these guys do? They started pouring gas into his truck. This guy would come in and talk about his gas mileage. You know, it was fantastic. It was going up, you know, and just a little by little, over months, you know, they would add gas and it kept going up, and then they'd level it off, and this guy was happy as a lark, so proud of his pickup truck. It was just wonderful. Okay, enough of that. So what do you do next? You start taking gas out, a little by little, over months, you know. And this guy's gas mileage, he'd go to the Ford dealer and just raise hell. You know, what's going on? There's something wrong. This truck isn't right, you know. And finally they told him, and oh, he was just mad as a wet hen, you know. Very subtle, but they were experts at it, you know. Hey, you come to work doesn't mean you can't play.